Almost missed the landing zone there. Hello. Let's talk about one of the key aspects of nature that has confused humanity. And this is the same sort of filth that, unfortunately, we teach children. And it's the same thing. All human beings, there's not a single human being on this earth, except for myself, maybe a few others, that don't suffer this delusion. And this delusion is a huge blindness to the comprehension of natura naturans. We can say Mother Nature, kind of humorously say that Mother Nature, accurately but humorously, Mother Nature is, she has no calculator. She has no idea of this term quantum, which of course is not a thing in nature. She's a dreadlock wearing, hairy armpit, hemp skirt, muddy feet sort of chick. And that's pretty accurate analogy. People kind of laugh at that, but I mean, it's accurate. The only thing she knows is pressure mediation. Force of motion, inertia, and acceleration. The conjugate geometry of the universe, which is not two things, but rather one thing. Now, if I said, well, this is dielectricity and this is magnetism, and somebody with a half a brain said, you know, and this is not silver, though, but, you know, this is just, you're talking about flip sides of silver. You know, this would be the silver, and, you know, there's no such thing as a head or a tail. It's just the coinage. The coinage is the silver. Human beings would take a piece of silver, and I know this is not silver, piece of silver and stamp it, and he's, well, this is the head, this is the tail. Human beings love, and all throughout history, love concept reification. I could tell you that, and I don't care if you believe me or not, I'm going to make a statement. You'll think it is bold, but it's still accurate. I do have wisdom, and anybody with amount of wisdom can see the irreducible simplicity of nature. And human beings complicate and obfuscate. There's a great word, obfuscate. Everybody should learn that word, obfuscate things. And let's talk about concept reification and the things that actually blind people to understanding nature. These are things that don't exist, and I'm going to make reference to many different things. And I've said this one many, many times. Ice and steam. You know, there's only water, which of course is two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom. Yes, it's a molecule, water. Now, through different temperature and pressure mediations, and of course there is actual plasma state. Most people have never seen, obviously so, a image of water in a plasma state, but you know, there are these different states of water, and we have different words for them, and we think they're different things, like there's ice on the road. Well, it's all water. Now, anybody that has, you know, a fourth grade education knows that these are one and the same thing, ice, water, steam, and plasma state of water. But still, that concept reification exists in our head. These things don't exist. There's just one thing and one thing only. Also, two things that don't exist as far as concept reification are waves. There's no such thing as a wave. Emptiness, shadows, space. I'll talk about space here in just a second. Also, too, the term quantum. Now, modern science is atomistic. It doesn't believe in things that cannot be quantified, and that, of course, is what the word. I've made several videos on quantum. And it will make note to you, and I've had people with PhDs or postdoctorate degrees in physics say, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, there's quantum this and quantum that, and quantum computers. Well, and I got a quantum heating device in my kitchen. It's conventionally called a microwave. This word, and I'll point out to you that everything that the world runs on, vis-a-vis the inventions in electrical field theory, mathematics of Tesla, Faraday, Steinmetz, Oliver Heaviside, James Clerk Maxwell, and others, these people never reified or used the term quantum, because there's nothing in nature that is quantum. Quantum is not a field. Quantum is not a field modality. There is no such thing that is quantum. This concept reification is in reference to what can be quantized and therefore counted, because today's scientists are not actual scientists in Aristotelian, Platonic, or Pythagorean sense, but rather they're mathematicians. And if you look up the definition, you'll actually see that it verifies as quantum is in reference to the smallest unit of quantifiable energy packet, and through that which we can actually insert formulas and make determinations as far as vectors and times and volts, amps, joules and so forth, so we can actually calculate things, to build things. And that, of course, is useful, but the term quantum is not a reference to anything in nature. There is absolutely nothing, including a quantum. What about quantum computers? They're electric, magnetic, and dielectric devices. I know this so-called quantum state of a quantum computer is not a thing in nature itself. It is still an electrical device. There is nothing in nature that we can call quantum. Nothing. This does not exist. Mother Nature has no idea or has heard of the term quantum. Shadows. Here's something else that we believe in. Shadows. As a child we look at a shadow, or a child looks at a shadow. A shadow is not a thing. A shadow is an absence or privation of light. This concept reification human beings are so in love with, obfuscates their understanding into the nature of Mother Nature itself. Emptiness. And as someone who translates ancient Pali and is familiar with debating Buddhists, and I'm using quotation marks there, they love to talk about emptiness. But of course, there's no such thing as emptiness. Emptiness is also, too, a concept. And doctrine itself, by the way, this via negativa, it is only used as a qualifier. This is empty of something else. That is empty of something else. The desert is empty of water, generally speaking. There's no such thing as emptiness. And I listen to these people talk about, I experienced emptiness. It's like, oh, really? Yes, I did. Well, so you remember experiencing it? Yes, I do. So you were there, right? Yes, I was. Well, it wasn't empty by definition. Not only were you there, but it had to have an attribute by which you could say this is emptiness. If you were there, it wasn't empty by definition. Number two, nobody could say anything about anything unless it has an attribute. Emptiness is not a thing. It's just like chaos. These are two words that human beings came up with that do not exist. We see this stuff in science fiction movies and novels and whatnot. We all have like, chaos. It's chaos. There's no such thing as chaos. Chaos does not exist. No way, no how. There's many books written on chaos. Chaos, nowhere, no how, exists. Complete, absolute randomness. Now, there is near infinite complexity, which a stupid human being, because it's so complex. Well, it's chaos. It's like, no, it's just insanely complex, and it's beyond your reasoning. But chaos does not exist. Neither does emptiness, because there's no such thing as emptiness. Something must have an attribute or a qualifier for it to even exist, because nobody could make a claim about anything, like say this is emptiness. It must have an attribute. It must be able to be recognized. Now, you can never recognize emptiness because, by definition, it has no qualifiers, and it has no properties or attributes by which to say, well, this is emptiness. So there's something else that human beings love to throw around, the word emptiness. In that same fashion, space. And I mean this literally. There is no such thing as space. Now, that is not a denial, by the way, of outer space. Leaving the Earth's atmosphere, and going between here and what other heavenly body. But space, and this is the one thing Nikola Tesla nearly foamed at the mouth about in regards to Albert Einstein. Einstein in relativity reifies space as a thing that acts upon other things. And Nikola Tesla, tore that apart over and over again. This is the reason why Tesla called Einstein a fuzzy-haired crackpot, was for Einstein in relativity, his position that space has properties and acts upon other things, but it is not. Space is the after effect of a divergent magnetic field, the three-dimensional force vector that extrapolates out the toroidal geometry that we call magnetism, leaves in its wake the negative image of infinity. Infinity, or true potential, is counter space, i.e. the ether. The negative image, if you will, or the negative of pure potential is pure impotency. Yeah, not that kind of impotency. Talking about a physics impotency. It's true impotency. It is literally the mirage or the negative image of eternity, which is this space. But space has no properties. Those are not my words, by the way, what I just said. Those are the words of Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla is right. Now, how can something act upon something else? I mean, this is a notion where people are scared of things that don't exist. I mean, they used to have dragon fighting schools. They literally did. People paid to learn how to fight dragons. Like, well, dragons don't exist. People are scared of things that don't exist. Humans have irrational fears of things that have absolutely no basis in reality whatsoever, but that's a matter for another discussion. But space does not exist. Space has no properties. Space has no attributes. It is literally the after effect of a divergent magnetic field. It is literally the negative image of infinity, or pure potential, or the negative image of counter space. The negative image of counter space would be space. In other words, everything Cartesian is the mirror image of counter space. You have to think about that for a while. People have a real hard time understanding space. Nikola Tesla understood it. Plotinus understood it. Numenius. A very few others. But, you know, what is between my hands other than the oxygen and the nitrogen, you know, which is there because I'm on Earth, is nothing. We can't reify that. And we have space and time. That's something else that, of course, does not exist. Time does not exist at all. Time is only a measure. That's all time is. You should download the book Time and Eternity, written by Dr. Ananda Kitish Kumaraswamy. He makes endless references to both Greek and Indian explanations of time. Time does not exist. It's only a measure. Every ancient culture said that time is the number 4. Yeah, it'd take a long time to explain why it's the number 4, but it is, and that's the reason why the number 4 is not present within the first 5 digits of the Fibonacci sequence, which are 1, 1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5. The only number missing is 4. This is also, too, the reason why the number 4 means death. In several current languages, the reason why 4 means death is because anything that undergoes or suffers time, therefore must die. If one suffers or is subject to time, then they therefore logically too suffer death. So, waves. You know, waves do not exist. Waves are not things. Waves are what things do. I have explained that a million different times. So there's no such thing as a wave. Just like a nada. Buddhists, for example, have reified this term anatman. There's no such thing. It's a via negativa. There's only that which is not the soul. The same thing with emptiness. X is empty of Y, you know. The North Pole is empty of elephants, or Antarctica is empty of palm trees. There's no such thing as emptiness. And waves are not things. Waves are said of what something does. It is an action or attribute of something else. But it is not a thing or a principle in itself. So, same thing is true of magnetism as the dielectric field. Is the conjugate geometry of the universe. Absolutely the entire universe. I can easily say, and there's nowhere else, not even Walter Russell said that it being the conjugate geometry of the universe, that these are an inseparable whole. Magnetism is the dielectric field. Now, Faraday did say that, but I mean, they're the conjugate geometry of the universe. Magnetism is no different than saying ice and water. Like, well, ice is over here and water is over here. Human beings think that these are two different things. They're not. They're one and the same thing. This concept reification is due to an attributional state change. The loss of energy or inertia manifests the three-dimensional force vector, which is the toroidal geometry of centrifugal divergence, or what we conventionally call magnetism. Magnetism is just the dielectric field and manifestation of a voluminous, vectored centrifugal geometry, which necessitatively must be so by the loss of that energy or that electrostatic or dielectric field modality. The same thing with all fields, because all fields are one and the same thing. And that's what a field is an ether perturbation modality. So, by the way, someone asked me last night, intelligent is, and sometimes there's intelligent questions, yeah? Even if they're very innocent. Sometimes intelligent, innocent questions about, someone says, what's the negative of a field? Let's take all fields together. What's the negative of a field? The negative of a field is the ether itself. The negative of magnetism is the dielectric. It's a simplex conjugate geometry which are together a holos, meaning these two things are one. And also too, the reason why the first two digits of the Fibonacci sequence are 1 and 1. They're not two different things. They're principle and attribute. They are one thing, just like magnetism and dielectricity are one thing. Also, two things that don't exist. Magnetic attraction. There's no such thing as magnetic attraction. I've explained this 1,000 times in 1,000 different videos. There's no such thing as gravity either. Well, here we got gravity. You know, this is gravity right here. You see that? No, that's non-point source mutual mass acceleration towards a null point in counter space. Two bodies that are actually accelerating towards one another are actually never accelerating towards one another. It's gravity. No, it's electrostatic or dielectric acceleration. And they're not actually accelerating towards one another, rather towards a null point in counter space. You could see this underneath the ferrocell or the supercell. All these things don't exist, and these things that don't exist that human beings, so here we got gravity, and over here we got magnetism, and over here we got... No. With wisdom and understanding, Mother Nature is extremely simple. She literally is, you know, a muddy feet, hemp skirt, dreadlocked hippie chick, if you will. Kind of a close analogy. These things don't exist. Waves, emptiness, time, shadow, space, quantum. People love to talk about space, and I think we suffer that because of greatly because of science fiction movies. Space, the final frontier. There's all these great spaces between things. Over here we got this, and over here we got that, and there's a huge space between it. Space is just a negative image of eternity. It is the after effect. People don't understand this when I say it. To me, it's blatantly simple. Space is the after effect of a divergent magnetic field. And the divergent magnetic field is the three-dimensional force vector of centrifugal divergence, which leaves in its wake, yes, space. But this space is merely conceptual. It is nothing real at all. As Nikola Tesla said over and over again, the one thing Nikola Tesla foamed at the mouth about, almost literally, was the notion that space has properties and it does things to other things. And this is not true. Science is a fabric of space. And they'll actually take like a trampoline and they'll stick a bowling ball in the middle of it and it bends the trampoline, and then they'll like roll a ball around it and they say, you see that? Is curving space and time. Like the trampoline is space, and space is curved. It's not. Well, what's causing the curvature and the acceleration of one body to another? Dielectric acceleration. Or in very simplex, even though inaccurate, everything is electrical. Yeah, everything is electrical. But actually electricity also too doesn't exist because it's actually a conjugate modality of the magnetic and dielectric. Phi times psi equals Q in Planck of electrification. So electricity is not an autonomous field modality. There's only two field modalities, and those two are one also, magnetic and dielectric. The conjugate geometry of the entire universe, which is toroidal and hyperboloidal. Hyperboloid, of course, is an hourglass shape. Negative image of an hourglass is a torus. Negative image of a torus is an hourglass. Superimposition of both of these makes a sphere. If you actually take a hyperboloid and you superimpose right over top of it a torus, you have a sphere. Yeah. So, anyway, I hope I kind of made that more simple. All these things that human beings think exist don't exist in reality. They are all one thing and one thing only. They are. And by the way, Occam's razor necessitates that it can't be any other way. There's not this thing in the universe and this thing and this thing. And that's, every scientist suffers that delusion. Fundamentally in the universe we have these things, you know, this and this and this and this. Yeah, but that's all there is. There's just about these 4 or 5. No, there's only one thing. There's energy and the dissipation or release of that energy which manifests countless other things. Mother Nature doesn't do math. She only does pressure mediation. Mother Nature don't have a calculator, girlfriend. These things don't exist. Space, time, emptiness, quantum, on and on and on. They don't exist. Concept reification is a huge mental block to comprehending Mother Nature. Thank you so much. I hope this video was slightly illuminating. If it was, any donation is warmly welcome in the link below. Or you can tell me you hate me. Anything is perfectly fine. Yeah? Thank you and good night.